So welcome. I'm very, very excited. This could be interesting. We've got Joe Baldwin-Trott here, who's the driving force. Well, she might disagree with that, behind this fantastic new book, Being Fine, that's coming out. Written by men. Yeah, it is aimed at men. We have got one female contributor, but I'm right excited because I'm going to get to meet. I'm one of the authors on the chat. I'm going to get to meet I've never met before, right? So it's always interesting. It's the Reverend Kasey Corbin Senior. We're going to have a little chat about mental health, really. But here's my first question for you, Kasey.
Okay.
What does the L stand for? So it's Kasey Corbin Senior. What is the L short for? Or does it just stand for L?
I can knock that one out the park. Lanier.
Go on, then. What's that again?
Lanier.
Oh, very good, right. So that's a heck of a name. I've only got Steve McDermott. So for those who don't know, we've got a professional motivational speaker from Yorkshire in the north of England here, and a motivational speaker. Where are you, Kasey? Where are you based?
I was in Atlanta. I am now in Savannah, Georgia.
Very nice, right? So what time of day is it in your part of the world at the moment?
It is 1 o'clock, well, 2 o'clock p.m.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us, right?
My pleasure.
So we were just, before we went live, and we were having a quick chat like you do, a little technical thing, me and Joe, and we were saying when Joe first had the idea for this book, and I don't know when you first, can you remember, Joe, when you first had the first nugget acorn of an idea for this? When was it?
It was kind of when this all started. So beginning of this year, actually.
Yeah. Okay, so beginning of this year. Now, of course, back then, even before this started, I think none of us, and I'm sure it's, if we read the papers, it's the same in the States. None of us knew really what this ride was going to be like, or indeed how long it was going to go on and go on. So we were just saying that it was never, I don't know if you'd agree with this, Kasey, I'm sure you would, a bigger need for a book like this.
Yeah. Because
there's probably even more people, and okay, the focus is on men getting to talk about how they feel, but let's include everyone in this who are going to need some help. So what my next serious question really is, what's your purpose or driving force for getting involved in a project like this? Where do you see it, and why do you think it's important?
My purpose of driving force for getting into a work like this is my own life's experiences and how I moved from feelings of hopelessness, helplessness, and worthlessness to feelings of hope, power, and value.
Yeah. And what was it, without giving away too much about what your chapter might be on, we can touch on it. So what was that moment of truth then? If you could, maybe you could just give us a little synopsis of, so that the viewers can go, oh, that was where I was. This is the kind of moment of change. It might not have been a moment, and how you turned it around. Just give us an insight into what happened to you then.
Yeah. My moment of truth came from hitting rock bottom, Steve. And I was addicted to drugs and alcohol at a point in my life from ages, I think I began at age 12 up until age 24. And a couple of horrendous events took place in my life where I was a volunteer victim, and I brought other people into my addiction involuntarily. And on one occasion, the big turning point for me in my life was when I brought my daughter into my addiction. She was an involuntary victim. She didn't ask to be there. And that was the big turning point. I knew at that point I had to do something.
Right. Yeah. Now I'm assuming, so what was the thing? So your daughter was the catalyst that something had to change in your life.
Yeah.
I don't know how much you know about people from Yorkshire in the UK, but we like to think, right, well, we like to think, and I don't know the equivalent state in America would be, we like to think we're really practical people. Right, because I think theory is all well and good in it, but I think for me, one of my passions for this book is to give people some practical advice, so that they can relate to the experiences we've had. So again, what I'd like to do is just dig a bit deeper on. So you said, yes, so your daughter was when you had to go. Well, I brought her in to my addiction as well. Right. If there was one piece of advice practically that people could take away if they were in a similar, maybe not the same situation, but something where they realize that what they're doing is impacting on just not themselves, others? What would be that practical thing you would suggest, based now being able to look back with the value of hindsight?
The practical thing that actually led to the transformation?
Yeah.
That thing, it would be two things. Number one, in my addiction, again, of which I was a volunteer victim. No one held the gun up to my head and, I'm going to make you be an addict. No, it was by choice. And when I made the choice to lower my standards on life and vibrate at such a low level, the values that my mother and my grandmother taught me were like, I just threw them all out the window. And so, I had no restraints. And, I just thought that I could live life pretty much free without any laws or restrictions. And so I did. Yeah. One of the incidents was when I was using it. Yeah, it was at this point I was using with a couple of friends. And one of the friends that we were using drugs with, and he died. His heart exploded.
And you were there at the time?
Yeah, we were there together.
Yeah.
And it happened, we were there together. It happened when we were all at my place. He left and the other guy left. He went to his apartment, which was right next to mine, the next building over. And about an hour later, the ambulance was coming. And when I went outside, much to my surprise, they were at his apartment just an hour later. And that's where, when he went in to lay down, his heart burst. And wow. I was kind of rocked by that, because it could have been me easily.
Yeah.
And the second thing that happened was, I didn't just drink to drink. I didn't just get high to get high. I started getting high to the point, Steve, where I couldn't remember things, and I would have blackouts, and it wasn't nice. As I look back on it, I thought it was cute then, but there was nothing cute about it. There was a moment of suicide, suicidal attempt where I was just crazy, delirious, out of my mind. And there was an incident where, with my daughter's mom, a domestic dispute between me and her, and my 6-month-old daughter got hurt. That's what I mean by I brought her into my addiction. Yeah. And I accepted 100% responsibility for that later on. Once I sobered up, I was afraid, I was scared, because I didn't know to what extent. I don't remember much, but what I do remember, I take responsibility for it all. And so those two things, were the turning point for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm hearing there, correct me if I'm wrong, is that, well, what we've not talked about, actually, this question I get asked all the time. So again, without going into my story, because tonight's very much about yourself, Kasey. Right. People ask me all the time, or quite a lot when I tell them, because the whole point of this book, of course, is for men to talk about this topic that we find it very difficult to talk about, or some of us do, right?
Right.
And when you are brave, if you call it brave, enough to start to have the debate, the thing that people don't know about it, say to you, is what caused it? They either go, what caused it? Or, now I know you now, I can't believe that of you, such a positive, motivational, optimistic person.
Right.
So what I'm interested in, what you've just said there, is, because I think viewers will be interested as well, is, can you identify a cause that got you into that downward spiral? Was it just a set of circumstances that you found yourself in? Was it the people around you? What was the cause of getting you into that terrible situation you found yourself in, first of all?
Yeah.
And then what was the moment where you went, so, okay, you said, well, yeah, your daughter was now getting impacted by it. A friend had died. You mentioned your parents and I think your grandparents' values. Was it a case of just having that moment of clarity where you went, I have to go back to those important values that matter? So if you knew what got you into it,
okay,
what was the thing that got you out of it or helped you get out of it, do you think?
Oh, yeah, I would be glad to share the cause with you.
Please do.
Yeah, the cause, Steve, I believe in retrospect, when I look back on my life was I was born into conditions of poverty. Now, that's so many people's story.
Yeah.
You know, so many people are born into conditions of poverty, and it doesn't affect everybody the same way. I'm well aware of that. However, the effects that it had upon me. This is what I mean by I was born into conditions of poverty. Poverty comes with its own energy.
Right.
It comes with its own vibrations. It comes with its own characteristics and qualities. And it comes with its own bite.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it bit me really good. And so, being born into conditions of poverty, what I didn't know, and my parents didn't know, my grandparents didn't know, and I'm sure that their parents didn't know, was that from ages 0 to 6, the formative years of my life, those very delicate years where the subconscious is conditioned and programmed, is that I was being conditioned and programmed to those characteristics and those qualities. Now, in poverty, you see crime, violence. I got to experience that.
Yeah.
Got to experience that at home. I got to experience it in the community and my peers. I got to experience it with other families. Also, anger is you see a lot of anger. You see a lot of frustration, especially when a family is trying to squeeze $50 out of a nickel, 5 cents. And times are hard and it's difficult. And a lot of anger is expressed, if people don't know how to live, is taken out on children. I was one of them. A lot of frustration is taken out on children. I was one of them. A lot of unnecessary pain and was taken out on children, and I happened to be one of them. And I didn't know that I was being, all day, every day, all week, every week, all month, every month, all year, every year, for the first 6 years of my life, I was being conditioned with this low level of vibration of living and thinking. I got to see drugs up front, close and personal, alcoholics, what that looked like, drug addicts. I got to see what that looked like. I didn't know that this was going inside of me, and it was conditioning me because I was experiencing this.
Sure.
Again, it doesn't affect everyone the same way, but that's the cause.
Yeah.
For me.
I get that. So there's some words you used a bit before that, which was about, I think you used the word responsibility.
Yes.
So this is the mind read, but I'm guessing there might have been a moment when you realize, well, actually, unless you started to take some personal responsibility and accountability for your situations, you could continue to blame all those things that conditioned you from being young. Was that what happened? It is.
See, the values that my mom and my two grandmothers gave me during the two incidences that I mentioned before, those things began to come back to me when I thought that my life was unbearable. I couldn't live it anymore. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where I can go to for help. I need help. I feel like I'm sick and I need a doctor, And those things started coming back to me. And I said, I wasn't raised this way. I wasn't raised to be this person, and I don't even know where he came from, or how he got here. And so those thoughts, those ideas, and having been taken to church, all of my childhood, and those things start hitting me, and questions of purpose. Why am I here?
Right.
And what am I supposed to be doing? It can't be this. And those things started me to think. Those just little things started just hitting, just tapping at me. And I couldn't escape them, not if I wanted to live. And at that moment, I had to take ownership of my life. I had to take responsibility.
Yeah. I think that's a massive one, that. And I think it's a challenge. If you look at a condition like depression, that's a hard thing to do. Ooh. Because it all feels like something that's happening to you, you know, and that seems to be our experience and was mine as well, and that you have very little, if any, control over, you know. And again, we're dealers in hope with this book, really. And I think part of my message to people is, and yours is more extreme than mine, although we all have these unique experiences, is when people tell you that, you know, that all things will change and that somewhere in the future, even though you can't see it now in the depth of your despair or challenges, things can change. That's the message I think that all the authors have in various ways. I think that if it was like a theme that runs, I don't know if you'd agree, Joe, because Joe's had benefit of reading quite a few of the chapters, you see, whereas we've only seen our own so far. I don't know if you'd agree, Joe, that that's kind of one of the themes that runs through it all, that we all have this, even that things, I was told so many times that, you know, that things will get better. It's hard to hear that and believe it. But would you say that's one of the main themes of the book, Joe?
Yeah, I think so. That there are a couple of things. I think, firstly, hitting rock bottom. I think that's definitely a common thread. And sadly, I think it takes us to hit rock bottom. And maybe we almost touch the bottom and then we sort of dap back up a bit. But it's when we really hit rock bottom. Certainly happened to me, and it's happened to all of you as the authors. So when you get as low as you possibly feel, and you hit a level that you never thought you could feel before, and I think that the forward thinking just feels like a Hollywood movie, right? Yeah. It's like, you know, might as well have George Clooney in it. That would be quite nice for me. But anyway, you know, I think it just feels like dreamland. So actually, the two things that you said, Kasey, are that the rock bottom, and also suddenly you just thought, well, what am I here for? And I know 6 people who have committed suicide, and I feel that possibly, and bless them, and we obviously have no clue, but I feel that sadly the answer to that question for them on that subject of suicide is that they couldn't find a purpose. But thankfully, all of you guys, and I know some of you have reached to that rock bottom point and also considered that most terrible thing that we could do as a human, that something has kicked in and gone, hold on a minute, I'm here for something. You know, there's a reason why I'm here, and this isn't it. So I'm going to get out of here and I'm going to do something different. And I think it's just doing that tiny one thing that's different. And that is the trigger in all of your stories. There's something, and thankfully, you know, some of you have literally met angels that come into your path at a moment in time, and you have literally said, right, that's it, something different. This is not happening to me. You might wobble afterwards, but thankfully something has got you out at that moment. So they're definitely the 2 common threads that I really see.
So that's great. So let's jump in that time machine now, right?
Okay.
I've heard about all that challenging upbringing, and then the challenges you had, and those terrible. So talk about what's life like today then for Kasey. What do you do these days, and what are the lessons you take that you can pass on to the rest of us from having that experience?
Life today is still challenging, Steve. It comes with its own tests, you know, but it's good. I fought. I had to fight to get a state of mind which could free me. You know, we call it over here stinking thinking. You know, I had to get out of thinking, and I had to get a thinking which was congruent and agreeable with the life that I wanted to live. And so today, that's what I do. I consider myself a mind scientist. Every morning that I get up, I work on myself. And I always say that if you fail to plant, you plant to fail. So every morning that I get up, I plant my life intentionally. I plant intentionally the kind of life that I want to live. From living a be nothing, do nothing, have nothing life to living a be something, do something, have something life, it takes a ritual. It takes a regimen. It takes a routine. It takes a day in, day out, good fight of faith. Life is a fight for territory. And the moment I stop fighting for what I want, what I don't want would take its place. And so it takes a reconditioning, it takes a reprogramming, and it takes you doing this every single, even when you don't want to, even when I don't want to do it, I have to do it. When I don't feel like doing it, I have to do it. When I don't want to live up to the standards and the values that I know which that will take me over, I have to do it. And so it's a daily routine. I just say, find you a routine that works. Find you a system that works and work it. Find you some principles that work and work them. How long do I have to do this? Until you're producing the results.
Yeah. Well, since you mentioned routine, you see, because again, part of in my chapter, as crazy as it might sound, and you need to see it in context, the big change for me was a routine from going from being the depressed me to what I'm calling like the new me, was to do the ironing every day. That one thing, right? Just that one thing, but committing to do the ironing every day. And even now, and it's a long time since the old black dog came calling. But even today, every day, we'd have to do it every day now. Although since my daughter moved back in, since COVID, there is more ironing again, as it happens. But when the ironing needs doing, I do it, right? And it's become what would have been seen as a chore and a negative is like a joyous thing for me, because I associate it with, the time I started to get better. So I completely agree with you that if you want to talk about peak performance, we're talking about, because I think the other thing with this book is to say, some remarkable things can happen if you see whatever challenges you have as a gift. I don't know if this is your view. I mean, obviously, when you're in the middle of it, you don't go, oh, thanks for that gift. Thanks a lot, right? I think we all know the circumstances we're in at the minute. And I think there's two ways we can look at the circumstances we're in at the minute. One is, it's the end of the world. Things will never, we can see it as a gift and go, how, we wouldn't have met probably if it weren't for this, and I wouldn't have met Joe, and we're having this, what I think is a really interesting conversation. Well, that's a gift, isn't it, right? And I don't know about it's been like for you as a motivational speaker, but I've got to tell you, there haven't been many gigs or events over here in front of a live audience of late. So I've been doing most, in fact, all of my work here, virtually, and doing various things like that. And I've got to meet some incredible people that would never in a million years have dreamed of putting themselves in front of a camera and being in an audience in the past. They might have come to a show, an event, or to the church or whatever, but they wouldn't have come to see me. So I think that's the thing. So I think, again, we need to have said that there's optimism in this darkness,
Yes, it is.
And that things, because my other vision, or my purpose for being involved in this book is to think about, you mentioned your daughter and the impact we have on others. And I was in the fortunate position that my wife, Candy, was my rock during my challenging times with my mental. I was fortunate to have her. But me and Joe's talked about this quite a few times, that I think we need to think that, for me, this book will be also a gift for those people who are in the challenging position having to help others that are suffering from mental illness and depression and all those life challenges. And again, it's giving those people tips and advice, because I think it's hard enough for the person who's suffering, but the person watching them suffer. Again, in your case, I don't know, I don't know if your mum and dad are still with us, but are your family and friends who were looking on, how they felt at the time? But it must have been incredibly upsetting for them. And I mean, you mentioned your daughter, but your mum, dad, your grandparents, if they were around seeing you getting into that lifestyle, it must have been incredibly painful for them.
It was. It was very. It was very painful for them. And what I learned, Steve, and also Joe, what I learned is that I also brought them into my victimhood, my state of being a victim, and I brought them into my embarrassment, and I brought them into my lifestyle. And so I was, like you just said, I was not the only one in it, and the only one being affected and impacted. So
so that's what we do.
And can I just mention something? So because I'd really like, actually, just while you've mentioned that, Steve, I'd really like some accounts of that in the book. Actually, I don't know if your Candy would be prepared, Steve.
Well, she's done a little bit, which she might do. She might write a little bit. But I think that's an interesting dynamic of the people that are impacted by mental ill health. You know, on my show, if a dog barks, there's a fine. So I don't know whose dog it is. Is it yours, Kasey? Is it yours, Joe?
It's mine.
Right,
it's mine.
That's fine, right? You owe me a cup of English tea at some point when we meet in the flesh. That's the fine on that. Yes, I think it's a massive debate, and I think although we're talking about men, again, I'm conscious of time. Maybe it's kind of sort of wrapping it up. One of the challenges we've talked about this side of the pond, Kasey, is the whole notion of men finding it difficult to talk about their feelings. I mean, we're focusing on mental health or whatever. What's your kind of feeling with that? And when you get, I mean, how good have you found other men at talking about these issues? Clearly, you're happy to talk about what you've experienced, but what's your view on that and men in general being able to talk about the feelings?
It's in alignment with what you understand and what you see also about men. And I don't find that men are big expressors when it comes to expressing, their feelings, and they're kind of recluse, and they hide behind their ego instead of really expressing. I know I did, and I was taught that unconsciously, and I didn't want to talk about this for a long time. It's been 25 years since I've been sober, and I didn't want to talk about this for a long time because I was afraid. I feared I feared the opinions of other people, and it paralyzed me.
Yeah. Whereas, so one of the debates we've had with the other authors on other Facebook Lives and stuff is the whole issue of vulnerability.
Yes.
That men find it very difficult, if not impossible, to be vulnerable because we're conditioned, using your words, to see it as a weakness.
Yes.
Now naming no names, but for example, there was somebody who came out on stage the other night to the theme tune "Macho Macho Man." I'm a macho man. Now that I'm not going to name any names.
TR.
I think you know what we're all talking about, right? And what I would say is I don't think that's helpful, because what that says is it equates strength with not having, being macho, and I'm the man of the house and I have to be strong. And if you've got any kind of mental health condition or other things going on in your life, it makes it almost doubly difficult to go, hang on a minute, I'm struggling, I'm not fine. We talk a lot about, again in the book, in my chapter, talk about when you say to a man, are you okay? And they go, I'm fine. And I always go, ask him twice.
Exactly.
Because the second time they might go, well, actually, because the first time they have to front it up. And there's been some recent research on this that says in the States and in Europe and in Mexico, men are conditioned that, big boys don't cry. And that being vulnerable is a weakness. So one of my passions is if together people like me and yourself and other authors go, do you know what? It's a strength.
It is.
And we need, and there's loads of people suffering. And if we give other men, or everybody actually, permission to tell their stories, then that's got to be good for us all. And let's drop this whole macho thing that if you cry or you're vulnerable, you're less of a man.
And you guys are role models. You are role models anyway, but you're role models because of this book now. And I don't say that lightly, but you are. I was on the radio, as you know, on Saturday on LBC. The first chat, the first phone-in was all about wearing masks in public. All men, some women called in and contacted the show about that segment. It then came on to the bit that I was in about loneliness and mental health. Not one single man contacted the show in any way.
Wow.
Not just didn't call in to go on the radio, but didn't contact the show in any way at all during a whole hour until the very end, because the host said, he was shocked. I cannot believe this. There's not one single man that's been in touch about this topic, about loneliness. And he raised the point that I raised, that was actually, we struggle, don't we? Yes, you do. And so you two are role models. So I'm just going to say thank you for.
Well, thank you. Well, I wear my role model lightly, you know. But that's great. Well, it's been great. It's been great to meet you, Kasey. Right, I'm very excited about reading your chapter in the book. You'll get to read mine. Thank you, Joe, for coming up with the idea in the first place. And we'll have a chat with some of the other authors in a fortnight or so. Thanks very much.
Definitely 2 weeks' time. See you then.
Yeah. Bye. Pleasure to meet you, Steve.
Same here.